Denny Heck from Washington State, introduced the Marijuana Businesses Access to Banking Act. And the logic at the time, there still weren't legal sales in the states, but the logic at the time was in response to these states legalizing, what was their job as federal officials to make it easier at the federal level to allow their state legal businesses in their states to have access to financing. It was very simple, it was very straightforward. It wasn't expected, the intention of the original bill was to help those newly state legal businesses. It wasn't there to legalize cannabis, it wasn't there to end the war on drugs, it wasn't to end racism in America, it wasn't to end inequality in banking. It was very simple and straightforward. The state voters have decided to legalize this industry, allow these businesses to be treated equally. And at the time, it was the first step in incremental reform to get to eventual legalization. I've been working on this bill for 9 years, 10 years, and at the time, we were doing our lobby days 6 or 7 years ago, and one of our members came back and said, Mike, I was just in a congressional office, and they said, this bill will never pass. And I was like, why? And they go, because marijuana is in the title. You have to change the name. And I was thinking, I was like, okay, I worked on Capitol Hill for many years. What's a good name? I was like, safe, safety, something. I go, Michelle, think of something. Safe, safety, banking, something. And she came up, I got it. Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act. And thus, safe banking was born. And can you imagine how much energy we've saved? So we can say, pass safe banking now. We don't have to say, pass the Marijuana Businesses Access to Banking Act now. And so how it made our life a little easier. And now, it is, I want to pat Michelle on the back and pat ourselves on the back. It's like when people are like, pass safe now, it's like, that's our bill. We've been working on this bill for so long. I never thought 10 years later I'd still be working on safe. I looked at this as I looked at this strategically, I looked at this politically, and I thought, okay, low-hanging fruit, what's the first to go? We're going to have safe banking. It's incremental reform. It starts, remember, this mindset is 2013, 2014. And then we're going to get 280 over the finish line. And I'm gonna sound like Howard Dean. And then we're going to go to legalization. And then we're going to go to and then we are going to get federal descheduling. And then we're going to work on a regulatory structure. Everything, one step led to the other, that led to eventual legalization. So all your businesses could be treated equally, and we could free the plant finally. I never expected 10 years later this would be the low-hanging fruit we're still working on. And then SAFE would be the vehicle to solve all the problems in society. It didn't go far enough. That wasn't the message we were pitching 10 years ago, but that's just sort of taken on this life of itself. It is very frustrating. It's frustrating in that the House of Representatives has passed SAFE, I think, 7 or 8 times. And it still comes over to the Senate, and the Senate still does nothing about it. In the Senate, can you hear us? Because I think they're finally hearing us. We've been doing lobby days. I'm trying to get the cannabis industry unified. At the end of last Congress, there was a lot of mixed messages coming from the cannabis industry on SAFE. Do you want SAFE? What do you want? What do you want in it? And there were a lot of siloed conversations. This company wants this industry group wants this group wants this. Do you really want it? It was a confusing message to Hill staffers. And I wanted to make sure the cannabis industry was unified, and this is what we want. It was a very simple ask. We want SAFE now, and then we'll work on other bills. And we've done that with a lot of the other trade groups out there to be unified. We've done a letter. We want SAFE introduced. We want a hearing on SAFE. We want a markup on SAFE. We want regular order. We want to bring it up, and then we'll focus on other stuff. And, I think the Senate has heard us. They introduced SAFE a couple weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago. They did a hearing on SAFE a week ago. And it's really frustrating from my end when our advocates and our champions on Capitol Hill, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I'm going to throw them under the bus. Senator Booker said there's a cannabis crisis going on in America. There's been a cannabis crisis going on for a decade. Dispensaries, storefronts are getting robbed daily in Washington State, and they could have solved this problem 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. and they wouldn't have had cash on hand. And instead, they're waiting for the perfect bill that's going to solve all the problems of society, and they're putting it on SAFE. It is very frustrating because it was never intended to do that. NCIA supports legalization. We want to free the plant. We want to end the war on drugs. We want to do what's right for legalization. This is just the first step. And so when people say SAFE doesn't go far enough, we know it doesn't go far enough. It's never expected to go far enough. The far enough is in the legalization bills, the descheduling bills, the regulatory structures that we develop that actually go far enough. And so, I mentioned the Senate did a hearing last week. I'll be honest with you, it would have been nice if they actually had operators in there in the industry who were dealing with this. They had people in there. It was the dog and pony show. I used to work on committee staff. I know we put these hearings on. It's preordained and pre-orchestrated. And so if you really want to have a good discussion, do briefings and meet and do lobbying and bring your people in so they can have those discussions. It means a lot to me, all you guys have flown across the country to have these meetings and educate Senate staffers. I'll be honest with you, I think the Senate Banking Committee got scared. They knew we were in town, so they decided to do a real hearing on the banking crisis in America at exactly right now. And so we're not going to have as many Senate banking staffers in the room as we wanted, but guess what? We're going to have a recording. We're going to make it available to all. As a former staffer, I want to provide information. I want to solve problems. I want to look at this as a policy issue, and I want to get the information across. When Congress does a law downstream, what effect is it having on the end users? And I wanted to bring in operators, and I'll be honest with you, if the Senate didn't do a hearing last week, I would have done my own hearing. And we would have had our own hearing to publicize the issue, because how many businesses need to get robbed, how many people need to get shot before Congress takes this seriously? Take it seriously, pass it, get it done with, and let's move on to social equity, and let's move on to all the delisting, the regulatory structure, all the things we need to address in this war on drugs. Let's get this done. Safe banking has Reggie gave a great speech yesterday. It takes about 10 years to get something done in this town. Safe banking is ready to go. It's teed up. Let's get this over the finish line. With your help and with this work, we can get this done. And so I wanted to bring in operators to actually tell their stories about what they're dealing with. And so I'll start out with Monica Gray-Fong, and she is the COO of Nice Guys Incorporated. She's a wonderful member at NCIA. I just wanted to tell stories. I'm going to go through, and hopefully Chris Jackson will show up, and we'll be able to have him speak, or have one of you guys come up and tell your stories. And have a conversation for Senate staffers in the room to hear. So Monica, if you want to go.
Thank you so much, Michael, for everything that you do for the NCIA. We really, really appreciate it. Hello, yes, my name is Monica Gray-Fong, and I am the co-owner and COO of Nice Guys Incorporated, which includes Nice Guys Delivery, a Type 9 license out of San Rafael, California, as well as Nice Guys Distribution, which is a Type 11 license out of San Rafael, California, and Nice Gals CBD Delivery, which is an online website, CBD retailer. I don't have enough on my plate right now. I just keep opening businesses. If you had asked me if I would ever have a cannabis business 20 years ago, my answer would be absolutely not. I actually think I probably am the least person in my high school or college graduation class that would ever be considered to have a cannabis company, let alone be sitting here right now advocating for cannabis reform. So thank you for having me here. I'm reflecting a lot on my past and what brought me here. I graduated from UCLA with a BA in World Arts and Cultures. And I spent 7 years working in the fashion industry in New York City. I then moved to Los Angeles, was working for a footwear company doing product development, and then I moved back up to Marin and was working at a footwear company in San Rafael, where I met my husband, and he had been working in the illicit cannabis market. I thought he worked in landscaping, but that wasn't the type of grass that he was cutting. We got pregnant with our first child, and he told me he wanted to do something serious, and he said he wanted to open a delivery service. Excuse me, sorry. We then incorporated our business, Nice Guys Delivery, in 2016, literally 2 weeks after we gave birth to my son. We were sitting there in a law office. I think I breastfed, actually, and we were signing up for this, and I didn't know anything about the cannabis industry. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I left my corporate position. I was the senior director of product development and costing for a footwear company, and I just completely threw myself into this industry. And I have to say that I've met so many incredible, amazing people and individuals and customers and patients throughout the way. Yeah, coming from the corporate background, I had no idea about the difficulties of running a business, let alone a cannabis business. I did not know that we could not have a bank account, take any other currency other than cash legally, and I would not be able to have the ability to write checks to pay for my inventory. We could not write off IRS expenses the way any other business can. Since opening, I've had 5 bank accounts shut down, including one personal credit card shut down, 5 credit card processing systems shut down, 5 break-ins, 2 within this last year. Actually, 3 within this last year, 2 in one weekend. We've had guns put to our delivery drivers' heads. It's getting really scary out there. It's been scary being a mother and also being a business owner. It was just the 2 of us that started this business. Now we have over 40 employees, which I really have close to my heart, and they're like family to us as well, so it's putting others in danger as well. During the pandemic of 2020, we were deemed as an essential business in California. We had to beef up our infrastructure in order to keep up with demand. In 2021, I received our IRS tax return, which was almost $1 million. I had to lay multiple people off that I hired during the pandemic. It was heartbreaking. These issues would be resolved if we were able to reschedule cannabis, but there is an immediate need to pass safe banking and to have the 280E tax code reform to exclude state licensed operators. Last week, there was someone from a financial service provider that gave a statement during a Senate hearing that Michael had previously mentioned. What was said was completely absurd. It is disappointing that this happened, as this particular service provider is one that I use. As an organization, we pay between $5,000 and $7,000 a month just to use them. So of course they don't want safe banking to pass, because they wouldn't exist. Thank you again for having me today, and I have so many stories from all that I just said, but I am really looking forward to finally getting safe banking passed through the finish line, and we desperately need, especially in California, there's a lot of businesses that are closing on a day-to-day basis, not able to keep up with 280E and the struggles that we have with the taxes in California in particular. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Monica. Next up, I wanted to have Adam Crabtree, CEO of NCS Analytics. Is the mic on?
There we go. CEO of NCS Analytics. We build big data platforms for financial institutions and regulatory agencies. I currently monitor just shy of 20,000 cannabis licenses across the country, and we ingest each week anywhere between 60 and 100 million data points. Before this, I was actually a banker. I often joke that I'm a recovering banker, so I'm often summoned as not only the token data dork, but as the banker in the room that can answer some of the unique challenges. I won't echo too many of the comments about the hearing last week, but I do believe that data and transparency are what this needs most. And for Safe to Pass, the biggest thing that I believe it's going to take away is giving banks a unified set of rules so they understand what's expected. Then they can decide if they can hit it or not, instead of hoping you're hitting those compliance burdens only to find out during an audit that you're not. We have definitely seen the gambit of institutions over the last 7 years. And the ones that you all know well and recognize those names, those are the ones that are doing everything they can to exceed those, and those are frankly the ones that are going to benefit the most from safe banking. That way they can better protect you and protect themselves.
Thank you, Adam. Next up, we have Chris Jackson, CEO of Forest Tree.
Am I on? Good morning, everybody. So I echo Chris Jackson, CEO, Forestry Vice Chair for the National Cannabis Industry Association Board as well. And I echo a lot of Monica's sentiments. Very similarly, in a mature market like Michigan, we go through similar, if not all of the things that she already mentioned. This isn't a question of morality or legality. It's a question, safe banking specifically, is about a hindrance to small businesses or any business in our industry that's state approved having access to basic and standard financial institutions, period. What we're being asked to do in a mature state like Michigan and California in particular, and others of course, is choose between safety and of course some of our states have access to local charter banks and credit unions, but they charge exorbitant amounts of money in order to even participate. And so really now we're being chose, if you have the feasibility to be able to do so, now you're choosing between safety in a lot of ways and banking. Of course, we're going to choose safety of ourselves, of our employees, of our consumers every day of the week. But me making money or losing money shouldn't be dictated by having access to a standard financial institution, right? The only thing that should dictate whether or not my business make money is the free market and whether or not we're performing in it. Then you have states that are transitioning like Maryland, like Minnesota, that are soon going to have an influx of operating licensees, and their financial institutions may not be prepared for what they have coming down the pipeline. They may not even have as many options as some of the more mature states like Michigan, California, and Colorado. And then you have states that are in a different category, the North Carolinas and the Pennsylvanias of the world, that may be planning to eventually be a part of our industry in any capacity. And this is an opportunity, safe banking is an opportunity for them to be able to be proactive and plan in terms of strategy opposed to being reactive and going through the things and the issues that all of the states are going through as we speak. The other thing that I'll bring up is from a minority perspective, we only make up, minorities only make up 4% of the industry in terms of ownership. Of the minorities that are already participating in the industry, what that tells me is not only are a substantial amount of the minorities business owners, small business owners in particular, but they're our employees ultimately. And so when we talk about, particularly in urban communities where crime rates tend to be higher than other communities, when we talk about the safety of the individuals that we care about and that we love the most, safe banking really alleviates some of the issues that we're currently having. And again, I'll offer, and I'll be brief, but I'll offer that it's not a question of morality or legality. It's more of a discussion about opportunity and safety. And so happy to be here to talk about any of those things. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Last up, we have Kirk Ferguson, a CEO of 2Accept. Kirk.
Thank you. So appreciate the opportunity to come out and speak today, and everybody for putting lobby days together. Very much wanted to speak on how important it is to pass safe. I'm a CEO of 2Accept. We facilitate payment services to about 10% of the U.S. retail market today. And we have a front row seat to the challenges that our clients face, and it's really difficult to see the pain that they go through. I've been in payments for my entire career, 20 years providing services in challenging industries, and this is by far the most difficult to operate in. We have services that are easy to provide to traditional retail businesses, e-commerce businesses that we just simply aren't allowed to turn on for our clients. We're already boarding them on the platforms we need to have them on, and we're using antiquated services that are not optimal, that are really hurting their ability to compete. The vast majority of the industry is on PIN debit payments, with only some of the debit networks allowing cannabis payments to be facilitated. What that means is most of them can't take credit cards legitimately. Most of the United States and the world in general is moving towards contactless payments, moving towards card not present payments, advancing their systems. The U.S. is behind a lot of that in many ways, and then even behind that is the cannabis industry. We're using systems that were built in the 80s We have to have customers face to face. We cannot run any card not present payments. Easy solutions to problems that some of us up here are facing today that would overnight solve some of the safety issues, provide access to capital, increase per transaction averages to deliver capital, much needed capital to our clients. It's just a very simple solution. And I think one of the main things I wanted to speak on was how critical it is to pass safe quickly. This can has been kicked for far too long. And I think that those in power, maybe they feel that they can kick it again. The decision to me, with a front row seat to the industry, really isn't we can kick the can again for another year, maybe 2 years, and either safe passes and we get access to these services and it improves, or things will stay the same. Things may not stay the same. Many of our clients, part of our underwriting process is to review background checks, which include showing us what type of liens they may have for tax balances. Many of them are struggling with that. They have past due lien balances with the IRS and state tax bodies that are in some cases substantial. It is urgent that we pass this so that they can use services to allow them to compete and stay in business, because if we don't pass this in the next year or two, or urgently for that matter, I don't know if it would look the same. So really, we need to deliver this legislation to our clients urgently, and we're very happy to be here to help with that. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Really appreciate the perspectives, and I wanted to throw some questions out there, and so they may be specific, but anyone feel free to jump. This may be an Adam question, but one of the issues that is coming up at hearings is the money laundering aspect. And to me, I'm not a money launderer, nor am I a banker, nor am I an operator, but I would think that if you had financing, it would be easy to trace. So I would think, like, from a regulator standpoint, they would want this, so they would trace it versus the cash. But I would love to hear your thoughts, but then everyone, if you have opinions on it, let me know.
So, without a doubt, if the money is in a bank account, not only is it safer for you all, it's exponentially easier to track. The part that becomes somewhat of a boogeyman, somewhat of a straw man, is where that money comes from. And so, being able to validate that every dollar presented for deposit comes from a state legitimate sale that falls in line with the FinCEN guidance is realistically why we started NCS. But it's easy to fearmonger, frankly, around where that money is coming from, because yes, there are unsavory elements in cannabis, but that is a very small minority. But at the same point in time, that is what gets the headlines around it. It's the large busts in parts of the West Coast and things like that that make everyone fearful. But that's where, if you take it back and do the transparent way around how this got there, knowing your clients, knowing all about them and their business, and the fact that they were opening their business 2 weeks after they had their first child, and all of those kind of things, it builds that relationship, and that's what allows banking to move forward, because you have to have an interdependent, incredibly transparent relationship with your institution.
I also know that with doing the applications for the banks that we were applying to, there was only 2 that I knew of at the time. There's many more that have opened now that are taking cannabis businesses. It was pretty much like cutting off my right arm and here you go, like, just take it. We had to do background checks. There's extensive processes that these banks already have in place to accept cannabis money. It's not only the fees, it's they do background checks. Every time that we make cash deposits, they require us to actually pull an orders report of where every single transaction comes from. And we also, in California, and I know a lot of other states, have the metric system, which is a track and trace system. It's seed to sale. I see a lot of people nodding their heads about it, which tracks every single transaction from where the cultivator or it actually came from to the distributor, all the way to the end consumer at retail. Now they're starting to track at the delivery level in California, where every single driver, their driver's license, the car that they're in, the license plate of the car, the type and model and make of the car, and what is in those cars, how much cannabis, the cost of the cannabis, and who is actually receiving that per customer, and down to the city level, so that now they can track our CDTFA California sales taxes. So So when there's concerns about tracking and money laundering, we are pretty regulated at this point. So if I can pull a report, and I'm sure a lot of other businesses can as well.
Thoughts down here?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. If you were interested in laundering money, I don't think you could handpick a worse industry to do that in. We're operating in the most heavily monitored and tracked industry on earth that includes a product. There's plenty of industries that if you wanted to conceal the nature of your funds, that you'd have an opportunity to do so. This is probably the last one you would want to get involved in, which leads me to believe that that's kind of the boogeyman. I don't really think that's a valid concern, and I think we should, make sure that we point out that there's other areas that people can do those things, and this is the last one that you would want to do that.
Any thoughts? Another thing, I think there's two costs associated with not having SAFE. One is just the fees to get any type of banking, and two, the added security cost of protecting your facility. So I don't know, either of you guys want to mention that as a small business, where does that affect you, and how having SAFE means you could hire a new employee, you could do more, just thoughts on.
Well, I already kind of mentioned $5,000 and $7,000 a month is a lot. And also the fees, I didn't even speak about the fees of taking credit cards. So we are able to take credit cards, but it's 5.65% on every transaction and 20 cents on top of that, just to actually accept a credit card. And I wanted to mention that our consumer doesn't understand that. So they understand that cannabis is legal in California. What do you mean you can't take Venmo? What do you mean you can't take PayPal? Why can't you take Square? Why can't you take, there's QR codes that you can pay with now. They just don't understand that. So those fees incrementally add up just astronomically. It's crazy. And so with that money, we would be able to give our employees raises. We would be able to build up infrastructures like normal businesses. Like I mentioned, during the pandemic, we went from 12 employees to 50 very, very quickly. I think the day shelter was in place, we received 600 orders in one day. We had to shut down ordering. We had to get Toyota of Marin to open up their doors to sell us cars because we didn't have enough vehicles. And then, then today we got hit with 280E and we had to lay all these people off. So we would be able to operate and keep up with demand and supply our customer with the services that they are used to. And they don't understand, the consumers don't understand that we can't operate in the manner that they expect us to. And provide, for the medical patients, get their medicine to them. I mean, cannabis is medicine. I spoke to a lot of representatives yesterday that were believed in the medical aspect, but we got to remember that a lot of people, and especially during the pandemic, from what I found, they were in need of cannabis. They weren't able to get their prescriptions, and so they were moving over to something that was something that maybe they didn't try, but they heard that it helped with pain, they heard that it helped with anxiety, they heard that it helped with sleep. Those are the three things that cannabis is most commonly used for, and guess what? It helped them. So we would be able to much better provide those people that need cannabis and not have to worry about taxes and cutting people and not having enough drivers and not having enough cars. We can't buy another car right now because we don't have the financial backing. We just got 2 cars totaled in the last year, and we can't afford to buy a vehicle. I mean, vehicles are astronomical right now, especially Priuses. But it's getting to the point where we're not able to provide that service level that we can to get our patients medicine.
Thank you. And you mentioned your customers not knowing. The politicians in DC don't know, and that's what this is for, is just publicizing this. What do you mean? You have access to banking. That's what was so bad about this hearing, was when this witness basically said we don't need it. And that just gives fuel to any opponent on Capitol Hill that, you guys don't need it, you guys are fine. And we want to make sure we keep letting these guys know. Chris, I don't know if you want to talk about just the cost.
Yeah, and I'll add, fees incrementally go up because the banks that, first of all, they have a monopoly in some ways because they're willing to do what all of the other banks aren't willing to do because safe banking doesn't exist. But also, there's a risk assessment with everything that they do related to our companies. And so we've been fortunate enough to grow as a business, which is what I think our state, and congressmen and representatives want us to do is grow business, to pay taxes, to raise quality of life standards, et cetera, et cetera. But what we find ourselves having to deal with is, we have 6 locations across the state, right? So first and foremost, hopefully, there's more than one location for whatever bank or credit union that you're using, because if there are any transfer fees incrementally, the amount of money, if we're doing well, we get charged more, right? And it really seems backwards to me in a lot of ways that you, in some ways, punish businesses for actually performing and doing well and giving back to communities. And I'll bring up that point too. For us, if we had excess cash, our goal is to be a part of the community that we exist in, ultimately, right? And so for us, I think it's important for every business really to give back to the community that in some ways is making sure, in every way, is making sure that they have the ability to operate. And so excess funds for us means we can do more for the community that we exist in. But unfortunately, the better that we do, the more it seems we get punished by the banking institutions because safe banking doesn't exist. So just wanted to add that.
No, that was really important.
I have one more thing to add. The reason why these break-ins are happening is because we're a predominantly cash-run business. All cannabis companies, we are not supposed to accept anything else because of FDIC and we don't have access to the banking system. So we have to run in cash. We are not targeted for our product. I mean, they want the cash. The one time that we did have a successful break-in when we had a small safe, we had a safe. The safe was broken into, and they stole $20,000 in cash. I mean, that's what they want. Access to an actual bank account, and we were talking about security. My husband happened to be a welder and has had to weld these crazy bars on our doors, and you're woken up at all hours of the night. 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock with a call from the alarm company, the police department, and I'd be able to sleep at night if I actually had a real bank account. I'm able to sleep now because I have this 400-pound safe bolted to the floor, but I wouldn't have to do that. But I'd have to pay astronomical fees on, not to mention to have that security. But if we were able to bank normally, if I was able to take Square payments or QR codes or whatever that is normal to the consumer, that just goes directly deposited in a bank account, I don't have to worry about it, then I wouldn't have to worry about this cash issue that's happening in the industry.
Well, they don't want the product because the price is so low in California, it's worthless. So they. I want to talk about legacy cash. Adam, Kirk, I don't know thoughts. I'm assuming that'll be an issue like safe passes. You could have, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars sitting out there that could have been around. I don't know if it's something safe addresses or it's something you've been thinking about.
I would imagine there are some banking services now, so the framework for how to behave there would probably already be in existence. And I can also, in that, speak on what we were just talking about, is that the strain that not passing safe has on everyone on this panel here, it also is providing challenges to the financial institutions that would like to serve them. So as much as what we're speaking about is a manual, excruciating, expensive process for the operator side, it also is for the financial institution. And what you may not realize is for a financial institution that wants to get into this business and bank a cannabis business, in many cases, the vast majority of the work is manual. So in my area, we've had 3 Bank of America branches and a Chase branch close recently in Southern California, my closest proximity branches. And the other Chase branch is converting to all automation. So this country is going automated, it's happening, and our industry is forced to operate in a manual environment. So in addition to the security issues that handling cash presents, it's also extremely expensive to support this industry. And in many cases, you have to hire a new employee at the bank for every 3 or 4 clients that you support, which means that the larger financial institutions that have automated their processes aren't interested in doing so. It's not something that they can monetize as they scale, which means that the services we're providing are expensive. It's difficult to operate. So it's a hard sell to the banks as well, even if they may want to service this industry, to allow dispensaries to be clients. In addition to that, one of the pain points that I think we should highlight is for the consumer. The consumers are not allowed to purchase their medicine with their payment of choice. We're taking customers that are used to paying with electronic payments, debits, and credit cards, and sending them into an environment where they may not be allowed to use that payment method, and in many cases driving them to an ATM machine where not only are they paying a service fee to pull money out of that ATM, but their financial institution also may charge them a non-network transaction fee, a penalty fee for pulling money out of an ATM that's not their financial institution. Those fees, which are millions and millions of dollars, are disproportionately affecting the lower income customers of our clients, because if you maintain a balance at the bank, in many cases you get those fees reimbursed. So the clients of our clients that need these services and medicines the most are the ones that are paying the price for us not getting safe banking through.
Thank you about that. Thoughts on legacy cash?
Yeah, I think legacy cash is an interesting one. It's almost another one of those straw men. A couple of years ago, there was a company that was offering to palletize your legacy cash and then actually put it on a boat to the Bahamas, because that would solve everything, because then you could wire it back, and that isn't classic money laundering. As far as legacy cash goes, there's 2 ways to handle this, the easy way and the hard way. The harder way, as we were talking about metric, every sale, every transaction you've done since inception is there. The bank can go pull that. They can validate, they can work with you, take the time to basically do a light forensic accounting, say, hey, here's how much you generated over that period, here's the corresponding legacy cash. It's not that complicated. If you don't want to do that side, you just start day one with your bank. You continue to pay out your vendors and things like that out of your legacy cash while your bank is accounting for everything you deposit until those 2 reconcile and you go about it. So that's why legacy cash is another one that's fun and scary to some people, but realistically it's not that hard to deal with.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Another issue is, what I've heard is, I think Kirk mentioned it, just because you pass safe doesn't mean it's the end-all be-all, because it's still a Schedule 1 drug. And if it's still a Schedule 1 drug, well then the banking regulators, DOJ, can get into the bank books, and it could be an issue that I don't think will ever get resolved, but it gives just a little more certainty that this is what the federal government is thinking on cannabis making. I don't know if you want to address, like, okay, it's a low first step, but then the true one is, rescheduling.
And that's exactly right. I think obviously passing safe is critical, but there are some elements, at least on my side, that we can't fully predict. We're dealing with, the largest change for our clients would be being able to take card not present or credit card payments. So in this country, those card brands are dominated by Visa and MasterCard. So they are private institutions that can make their own decisions. Passing safe is intended to give them the cover and the courage to be able to allow our clients to take those payments, but there is no guarantee there. So we are dealing again with private bodies that make their own decisions, and some of them are so large that it's difficult to get a handle on exactly where they're at. You may speak with one department and get one answer today, and you may speak with another department and get another answer tomorrow, and then you may speak with counsel and get another answer the following day. So all that being said, passing safe will definitely provide added benefits and added payment methods for our clients, and will be one step closer to getting them to move across the line for allowing us to make those payments.
Okay, thank you. One of the big issues, it is a big issue. It is an important issue. It's something we're all fighting for. I know it's something Cory Booker and drug reform people want, is a social equity component of cannabis. Anyone is free to jump on this, but Chris, you're so active in this, I would think one of the greatest things to help small businesses is lowering the cost to those businesses, to make it easier. Whether you're in a state that it takes $5 or $10 million to get in, or whether you're in a state that takes tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands to operate, could make the difference for a small business owner from an equity standpoint. We would love to hear your thoughts on how SAFE could You know, because people are putting this up and saying it doesn't go far enough for these reasons, where I think it's the first step to make it easier in social equity.
So to your point, it certainly doesn't go far enough, but I think we exist in a system where incremental growth is better than no growth. First things first. But I'll say, and I think I mentioned it earlier, minority ownership in the industry is at 4% or less than 4%, depending on who you talk to, which is abysmal. I imagine that most of that 4% are probably small businesses. And so from that perspective, in terms of just the ability to I guess the word I'm looking for is compete in a market, right? Every dollar counts. And sure, there are some larger companies that are ultimately going to benefit from safe banking, but I argue that the only way that small companies survive in this industry is access to banking, right? Because of the absorbent fees that we've already discussed. Unfortunately, the industry is maturing, and with maturity comes some pitfalls, and you know, mature markets need to correct themselves, and that's what we're seeing across the country as we speak. So the name of the game for small businesses, assuming that the 4% are probably made up of those small businesses, is to survive and then eventually thrive as a company. In turn, what that means is, in order to survive, every penny absolutely counts. And if safe banking allows for small businesses to survive and figure out how to thrive in the market that we exist in, then it's absolutely a benefit in terms of equity for small businesses to even have an opportunity to see the other side of what this industry has to offer. Positively and negatively, but the goal is to have an opportunity. And without access to standard financial institutions, it makes it really difficult for there to be an opportunity to be around in the future.
Don't worry, that's not a vote for us to get out. We still have a couple more minutes. I want to open it up. If you have questions, and you may have the answer already, but we're recording this. We're going to make it available to Senate staff. If you think I missed something, where you want, what about this? What about this? Let me know. You know, if you want to ask a question, anyone, you know everything. Make it easier. All right. So with that, what about last thoughts or questions that you want to throw out there? Something we missed on the topic.
I think that SAFE is incredibly important, as we've discussed. I also think that we are in an interesting time right now with banking, things that it actually kind of works to your advantage, back to the legacy cash and back to these operators, as we're dealing with some of the, we'll call them interesting, liquidity crises and things like that of banks. It actually makes your business exponentially more important than it may have previously been, so keep that in mind. Also, when you're looking for a bank, I would suggest one of the questions you ask them is, why are you in this? That will immediately tell you whether there's someone who is actually in this for the right reasons, whether they're, I'd say that if you ask that enough times, you would be able to pinpoint their fee schedule without them ever uttering a number just based on their answer. So remember, you guys are just as important to banks as they are to you, and getting more so. SAFE is only going to level that playing field more and make your lives a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah, I was just hearing everything. This is a really personal issue for myself and operators. We can't refinance our homes. We can't get life insurance. We can't be able to process payroll without having the transparency that a bank is backing our payroll. If it's a service provider that uses the banks, certain banks, payroll will get shut down. Employees will not get paid. This is an issue that is affecting myself and other people in this room, and there are the cannabis industry, I don't know the exact number, but there's thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people in the United States that work in this industry now. We are a industry of workers that are contributing to our society, and we can't do these things that are simple day-to-day things that you would do any normal citizen. We don't have access to those rights. It's just, you know, if I wanted to buy a new home, I probably couldn't. So these are things that I really want Congress and Senate here on Capitol Hill to really think about, that it's not feasible to be in this industry under these circumstances, so something needs to change now.
Yeah, one more thing on the equity front too. Minorities disproportionately, for whatever, there are a number of reasons that we can point to, but just don't have access to cash in a way that some of our counterparts do. And so what safe banking in a lot of ways would do is allow banking institutions to, you know, whether it's because they have specific programs, CDFIs, whatever the case is, would allow for these small businesses to have access to cash that they otherwise wouldn't, by way of loans, grants, et cetera, et cetera. I'll also offer that hemp businesses are impacted as well, although in 2018 or 19, I believe, 18, hemp bill was passed. Unfortunately, in some jurisdictions, it's still seen as cannabis at the end of the day. And so there are a number of hemp and CBD businesses that also experience issues with banking where they shouldn't probably. So yeah, I think safe banking is important to the entire industry, including parts of the industry where the federal government already acknowledges cannabis in some form or fashion.
Thank you. Kirk, last thoughts?
Yeah, I know. I echo that sentiment. We're simply looking to get the permission to be able to provide traditional services to people. That includes lending. I think it's important to note that the process to become licensed in this industry is in many cases excruciating. The idea that this industry is filled with bad actors that need to be over-policed is, in my opinion, wrong. The clients that we work with, which represent a large portion of the country's operators, are some of the most articulate, hardworking people that I've ever met in my career. So we very much want SAFE to pass so that we can service them and allow them to stay in business and allow them to be profitable, which is what they deserve after years of going through the struggles that we're talking about today.
Well, one, I want to give a round of applause for the witnesses. One, wouldn't that have been a better hearing last week if we had these guys testifying? And two, wouldn't the world be a better place if I was chairman of the Senate Banking Committee? I see a couple donuts and muffins over there. Please eat them, get some roadies. You've heard the message. This was a great message on SAFE. We're going to keep pushing. When you guys are talking, when you guys are back in your communities, talking to the media, telling your stories, telling your friends, keep to the message. When you're wandering the hills, bump into anyone. You're going to bump into all these reporters out there. Bump into them. When you hit these offices, I'm doing afternoon meetings. You're doing afternoon meetings. Keep that theme of why. Keep the message on SAFE. Let's get SAFE done. Let's get SAFE done this year. And then let's move on to the next thing. And so with that, just a wonderful morning. Enjoy your day. I know I'm going to have a really productive day. We have the room for 20 more minutes, so mingle, hang out, whatever, and then I'm going to kick you guys all out in 25 minutes. So enjoy. Thank you again.